Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, wide receiver Hunter Renfrow looks to have a bounce-back 2023 after having a very lackluster 2022. You'll hear his thoughts and my thoughts, plus a whole lot more, coming up on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, July 31st, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. And won. And won. And won. And won.
Hey, welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show. Of course, as always, if you're checking us out on YouTube, it's many thanks to my man Ari. He does a great job each and every day making sure we're up on YouTube. We're looking good. We're sounding good. He's doing all the heavy lifting behind the scenes, and we definitely appreciate him. You can check him out on Twitter at Ari Produces. If you ever want to reach out to me on Twitter, you can at your boy Q254. And, of course, if you want to get in on the show, 707-654-4693. That's the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line. As a matter of fact, coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts. That'll close out the show. Segment number 2 will be all things Hunter Renfrow. We'll hear from Hunter Renfrow as he met with the media on Friday following day 3 of Raiders training camp and really reveal some things that I didn't have any idea about until he said it on Friday. And I really want to talk about him and my expectations for him in a bounce-back season in 2023. And then here in segment number 1, kind of want to go over the news and notes of the day. And really all I want to talk about is the first week of practice, right? And kind of my takeaways after 4 days officially in the book. Of course, we talked about it following day 1 and day 2, but then day 3 was Friday. There was no show after Friday, and then day 4 was Saturday morning. The Raiders were off on Sunday, and then today they're going to be back at practice starting at 9:15, be about 9:15 to 11, and then we'll meet with the media or meet with the coaches, Mick Lombardi, and then we'll also meet with some players following practice. So, again, about 9:15 to 11, offensive coordinator Mick Lombardi and some players following practice. And then, well, get back onto a regular routine. But so far, that's really all the schedule that we have so far for this week. But I'll tell you right now, the biggest thing that stood out to me after the first 4 days of practice in 2023 is the fact that everybody to a T is a big fan of Jimmy G. Now, I don't know what that means as far as how the production is going to go, what it's going to look like, but I'll tell you what, everybody that we've talked to really respects the hell out of Jimmy Garoppolo, and they respect his leadership. They talk about him like he's one of the guys, and maybe I was just being foolish and I didn't realize this. And again, I mean, this is a guy that now I've only covered for 4 days. I mean, he wasn't there during OTAs, wasn't there during mandatory mini camp. So really, this is the first few opportunities that we've got to even see him out there and see how the players interact with him. But there's no doubt about it that they all are on the same page and look at Jimmy G as just one of the guys. And I don't know if that means that they didn't think that Derek Carr was one of the guys or it's just a different voice in the room and they're cool with it. I don't know. But it just seems like that everyone is on the same page with Jimmy Garoppolo. Max Crosby the other day called him a dog, said that he was a guy that talks trash. Andre James, the center, said he's just one of the guys. You know, I heard he's a good griller. Going to have him come over and check out his grilling skills. I mean, it just seems like everyone really appreciates and respects Jimmy Garoppolo. So it's easy for me to say that from a guy that, like I said, sitting in the media room, listening to these different players and coaches talk about him, also seeing him interact on the field when he's out there, and he's been out there 3 of the first 4 days of practice. He did not practice on Friday, and some people freaked out, but that was a day that the Raiders had planned for him to be off, and they're going to have more days like that. They're not just going to throw him out there full throttle. Look, the goal is to get him to the beginning of the season, right? That's all that matters, getting them to the beginning of the season and getting on that plane to head to Denver. That's what it's all about. So they're going to give him regularly scheduled days off, and so Friday just happened to be one. But my good friend Omar Ruiz from NFL Network, he was there at attendance on Friday and Saturday for Raiders training camp, and then he's met with the Raiders following, and they just asked him what his early impressions of Jimmy G were.
Well, I'll just tell you my first impressions of him here at training camp. It's been a noticeable difference. I was here in minicamp when obviously he wasn't on the field. I was here yesterday, training camp practice number 3, when he had that scheduled day off, and just seeing him here, the command that he has out of the huddle, the presence that he has on the field. It's something that the players talked about, Jacoby Myers and Hunter Renfrow yesterday in their press conferences, but to see it, it's very apparent, for somebody who watches a lot of NFL practices. It's apparent the leadership and presence that Jimmy Garoppolo has. Now they just got to work on the timing, the rhythm, the routes, because you mentioned he knows the offense, but it's forming that key chemistry with his current weapons. I think they'll do that in training camp, and so the expectations ought to be high for him in this offense.
So there's Omar Ruiz right there from NFL Network, and him just giving his early thoughts on Jimmy Garoppolo. So if you thought that I was just, talking or capping or whatever the case may be, just blowing smoke when it came to the fact that everyone respects Jimmy Garoppolo, you hear it from Omar Ruiz right there. And he said that it was very apparent, right? And he's been at plenty of different training camps, so he knows what he's looking for. He's been at many practices, not just Raiders, many different practices, and knows exactly what he's looking for and what he's talking about. And Omar Ruiz is a guy that I respect the hell out of. So, if you don't want to listen to me on it, listen to him when I say, and he says, that a lot of folks have a lot of respect for Jimmy Garoppolo when it comes to the silver and black. Also, there's a lot of talent in the wide receiver room. It is deep. 11 guys. Obviously, Devontae Adams is wide receiver 1. Jacoby Myers on Saturday made some really nice one-handed catches, just laying out for some catches. And look, it's against really soft coverage when it comes to wide receivers, or some of the drills weren't even with a defensive back on them. But just to know that he's a dude who normally has been the number 1 wide receiver in New England is now the number 2, a true number 2 for the Raiders. That just lets you know that they are very deep at that position. But that's not all. They've got Hunter Renfrow, obviously, DeAndre Carter, rookie Trey Tucker, who made some nice catches over the weekend. DJ Turner, right? He made the 53-man roster last year. He's got a lot of speed. Christian Wilkinson, Philip Dorsett has a lot of speed. There's a lot more guys, 11 dudes in that wide receiver room. But if you think about it, 17, 16, and 13 could be one hell of a combination, right? One nasty combination. Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and Hunter Renfrow. Man, that can give opposing defenses a lot of fits. But here's head coach Josh McDaniels talking about the competition in the wide receiver room.
Again, the goal at the beginning of the offseason was to try to see if we can improve the competition in every room for the singular purpose of, guys, when they compete and know they're competing for the same opportunities, that's really the best way for them to improve because they don't get comfortable and they're not just satisfied with where they were. And so, we try to do that everywhere we could. Some places are easier to do it than others based on your opportunities. But I think some of the guys we brought in, Philip was an off-season award winner. Trey's really been a quick study and been eager to learn from, who the guys that are in his room. DeAndre Carter, same thing. He's done some really good things. Christian Wilkerson. So we have a very competitive room. And I think the older guys have really taken to, trying to help some of the younger guys come along with some specific aspects of receiver play. I think we've increased our team speed, no question. And so, again, there's a lot to sort through, and everybody's kind of working to improve at this point. But I feel like we've added competition and added a couple different skill sets to the group.
So there's the thoughts of head coach Josh McDaniels just talking about the competition in the wide receiver room. And look, 11 dudes. 11 guys that a lot of them have speed, a lot of them have different skill sets. They're just there's going to be some tough cuts when they get down to cutting down the roster and coming up with the final 53 men. There's going to be some dudes that have some talent that are going to be let go. And I know that there's been years before that we've said that, but when you look at how deep that wide receiver room, and that's one of the many reasons why I believe this offense has a chance to be really special as long as Jimmy G is healthy, that wide receiver room is going to be really, really nasty. Well, how about on the other side of the ball? One thing that's been very apparent is no Nate Hobbs. He has not been out there since he took that softball off the eye at the Battle for Vegas game, the Golden Knights versus the Raiders, that charity softball game that happened the Saturday before the Raiders were supposed to report for training camp. And that's unfortunate. I don't think Nate Hobbs is going to lose his spot, but it's unfortunate for him because he has time to grow and gel and learn Patrick Graham's scheme more and determine where he's going to be. Is he going to be an outside corner? Is he going to be a slot corner? What's going to be the case? Where's Nate Hobbs going to go? We know Marcus Peters, as long as he's healthy when the season starts, he's going to be holding down one outside spot. So there's other guys in that room, obviously Hobbs, but you got Faison, you got Duke Shelley, you got Sam Webb, you got David Long, you got the Jacorian Bennett, the rookie. There's plenty of guys, 11 dudes in that room. So 11 wide receivers, 11 cornerbacks, and right now Nate Hobbs is getting no burn. So guys like Jacorian Bennett are out there competing. And when I mean competing, he's had to be talked to a couple times by head coach Josh McDaniels to kind of pull it back a little bit, which is something I always say. I'd rather have to tell a guy to calm down a little bit than have to try to urge him to have a little bit of sense of urgency, right? Or go out there and compete. He is out there competing. He's showing that he wants to be out there starting week 1. I'm not saying he's going to be, but he's showing that that's what he wants. And remember, all this is with no pads. The pads will come on sometime this week. But I asked head coach Josh McDaniels about the competition in the quarterback room. This is what he had to say.
Same thing, very similar, maybe a little bit more changeover than the receiver room. But, again, I think there's a depth of competition there now, some different faces than there were last year. And again, different levels of that. JB's obviously in his first camp. Marcus Peters has got a lot more experience and wisdom in certain areas, certainly. And then we have a lot of guys in between that, so Face and Duke and David Long and on and on and on. So I just think that, there's a lot of guys out there working and competing. Look, we have 11 receivers and 11 corners right now, and they all know that there won't be 11 and 11, eventually. So, they're just everybody's trying to give their best effort, be ready to go every day and compete. And that's what we hope to build at each position on the roster. And you can really see those two groups really stand out.
So there you go. There's head coach Josh McDaniels on the competition in the cornerback room. And you heard him mention Jacorian Bennett right there as well. Here's his thoughts on just the rookie and what he's looked like so far. Again, it's only 4 days of practice that they've had with no pads, but what has he thought of the rookie Jacorian Bennett?
He's mature, really a pleasure to work with. Takes the game very seriously, intelligent, can learn quick, and then, take it from the meeting room to the field. You've seen him compete on some down the field throws. It's hard to run by the guy, because he runs very well, and he's trying to get his hands on balls, which we saw that in college as well too. So, just a competitive guy, a good leader. Quiet at times when he's really paying attention, does a really good job of understanding the material, works really hard at it. And again, there's a lot of those guys, I think, in this class that kind of fit the same mold, but JB's done a good job so far.
So there you go. There's his thoughts on the rookie. I'm interested to see what they look like with pads. Pads will come on sometime this week, maybe today. Right, there might be an opportunity when I come back on the show tomorrow. I'm talking about, hey, they had pads on today. I know it's going to be sometime this week, either today or probably tomorrow, one of the two. But so far, 4 practices in the books, a lot of competition. Hunter Renfrow, Jacoby Myers, Michael Mayer, the tight end, the rookie, they all had a really good day on Saturday. Hunter Renfrow got a lot of targets on Saturday, and it's good because we're going to talk about Hunter Renfrow coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Going to talk about his down year he had in 2022, why that was, his thoughts on it, and then I'll give you my thoughts on what he could do in 2023. That's all coming up in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast after I tell you about FanDuel. Right now, you need to take your first swing at betting Major League Baseball on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think's going to hit the first home run, steal the first base, first 5 innings, whatever the case may be. Get it done, right? Player prop bets, it's all on an app that's safe, secure, and it's super easy to use. And when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on Major League Baseball than FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to talk about a guy who got a lot of targets at Raiders training camp on Saturday, and that was one Hunter Renfrow. He's a guy to me, just looking at practice and watching what he was able to do that last week. He looks like he could really thrive in this offense led by head coach Josh McDaniels. Get a lot of those underneath catches and extend drives. He looks like he could be that dude. Not to mention, we've seen all the success that the slot receivers have had in the Josh McDaniels-led offense, right? I mean, going back to last year before the year got started, I remember thinking, man, this is going to be one hell of an offense. And, it's funny, we talk about Devontae Adams quite a bit, but I remember just thinking about how well the slot receiver has done in this offense, and I'm thinking, man, Hunter Renfrow could be that dude. And I remember even Amber Thea Harris, a good friend of the show, she even chimed in on my radio show and was like, Q, if you really think about it, go back to even the year that Randy Moss was dominating in New England. Who was the slot receiver that was killing it? And then I went back and looked, and I was like, oh, yeah, no, you're right. The slot receiver was a monster, right? And so all I kept thinking about is how great Hunter Renfrow could be. And obviously it didn't turn out to be that. Matter of fact, the whole offense wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be. Devontae, Darren, Hunter, Josh Jacobs, it was going to be phenomenal, right? Well, Devontae was as advertised. Josh Jacobs was better than as advertised. Hunter Renfrow, Darren Waller, not so much, and that was due to injury. 2022, Hunter Renfrow only played in 10 games, had 36 catches, 330 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 fumbles. And unfortunately, I remember the fumbles more than I remember the 2 touchdowns. especially the first one where he fumbled against Arizona, right, and got concussed, dropped the ball, put it on the ground, and Arizona picked it up, took it to the house, and won the game. Right, and it felt like the beginning of the end for the Raiders in their 2022 season, right? I mean, Nelly is performing at halftime. It's getting hot in here. Everyone's losing their mind. Everyone's fired up and pumped up. And then all of a sudden, it's like crickets when Allegiant Stadium, when in Allegiant Stadium after that game got wrapped up. It was just unbelievable the way that they lost that 20-0 lead. But that's for another day. So, yeah, Hunter did not have a very good season at all in 2022. Again, 10 games, 36 catches, 330 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 fumbles. So, we met with them on Friday following practice, and he had a pretty lengthy, media session, and he was very honest and open about, the season and the fact that he wasn't having fun, the fact that he doubted himself. He wasn't sure if he could even play at this level anymore. And you remember, this is just a couple seasons removed, well, actually 1 season removed from what he did in 2021, where he was the main wide receiver because Darren Waller had gone down, and he racked up so many yards and so many catches, and he literally put the Raiders on his back until Waller was able to come back. And even then, Waller still wasn't that dude. So there's questions, right? There's plenty of questions going into training camp. There's been questions about if the Raiders were going to trade him since they drafted Trey Tucker. They signed Jacoby Myers. There's all kind of different conversations. Can he thrive in this offense because he does whatever it takes to get open? Josh McDaniels wants him to run exact routes and be where he's supposed to be at a certain time, quick hitting offense. So Hunter was asked, can he thrive and be the Hunter Renfrow that we all expect in this offense led by head coach Josh McDaniels?
I'm practicing hard to try to, right? I think all of us are. I think everyone out there at practice is doing what they can because they owe it not only to themselves, but they owe it to their teammates. And I think that's the important thing, and that's the big thing for me where I felt like I let a lot of my teammates down last year. And that's something that, left a bad taste in my mouth and something that I want to get over and prove to them, through the spring and also going into the season that I'm a guy that they can count on and it's going to be consistent.
So there's Hunter Renfrow talking about he's out there working to show that he can. And again, like I said, on Saturday, man, it seemed like it was the Hunter Renfrow show. I don't know if that was coincidental. I don't know if that was something that was planned after he met with the media on Friday and, talked about trying to show that he could thrive in the offense. But between him and Michael Mayer and Jacoby Myers, man, they all dominated practice on Saturday. They all looked really, really good. And that doesn't mean that the defense didn't look good. It just meant those guys were extra special. And again, I saw so many passes to Renfrow, and I remember talking to different people like Vinny Bonsignore and Mark McMillan, former NFL defensive back that I was standing on the sidelines next to, and I was like, man, that's how Hunter could thrive. He could really thrive in this offense just doing what he just did right there, and everyone to a T was like, that's exactly right. So Hunter was asked about when it clicked that he, in fact, could do this and do it at that level.
Yeah, I mean, I think practice matters, right? And I feel like this spring was a big time for me to go out there and prove that I could still do it to myself. And prove that I can play, right, and so that was a big deal to me, and so hopefully I got some confidence from that, and hopefully it carries into training camp.
So you see, it really clicked in practice. It really clicked in the spring. It's clicking right now in training camp, and he's going to continue to grind and continue to work and continue to build. And I'm interested to see what it looks like once the pads come on. Once the pads come on this week, again, that could be as early today. Maybe that's not till tomorrow. Just kind of want to see how this dude builds. And more importantly, I'm excited about those joint practices. I've said that multiple times, but you'll really start to learn a lot about this team, especially some of these weapons that they have offensively and actually the competition that they have in the defensive room as well against the 49ers and the Rams when they face them in back-to-back weeks in joint practices. I think that's really going to help this team show who they are. So by the time the season starts, we really don't know what a team looks like. Until the first 3 or 4 games are in the books. And we won't know everything by the joint practices, but I think having back-to-back joint practice weeks is going to be big, right? Because you're going up against someone who's not you, and so you're not being told, all right, go a little easy, go a little slow, let these guys get this because we want to see what it looks like, right? I mean, it's different when it's a joint practice against another team. So I think that's really going to be beneficial for the Raiders one way or the other. It's going to tell them where they are and how good they could be, or, whoa, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, right? One way or the other, the joint practices will be really, really good. And so one of the things that I mentioned early in this segment was the fact that Hunter Renfrow was not having fun in 2022. And when you're playing a game like football or when you're doing a job like radio, if you're not having fun, and look, don't get me wrong, they make a lot more money than any radio guy does, but it's not one of those jobs that you do if you're not having fun, because then it's exactly that. It's a job, and you don't want it to be a job. Well, that's the same thing with football. Football, if you're not having fun out there, then it's all bad. And Devontae mentioned that last year. There was times where he wasn't having fun because they were losing. And he's not a loser, right? He's not a guy that wants to lose. He expects to win games. And the way that they were going out there executing, he wasn't having fun. And he was very open and honest about that following one of their losses, in the locker room. He said it to us, hey, this is not fun. We are not having fun. We got to get back to having fun. So Hunter was asked, and this is the final soundbite that you'll hear from Hunter Renfrow from Friday's media session about what went into him not having fun in 2022.
I think a lot of expectations I put on myself, and a lot of just trying to do too much and feeling kind of, I've always gone by the two things of, the way I measure my success in the season is, not letting my teammates down and being the reason why we win games. And I feel like I didn't do a very good job of either one of those last year. And that's why, I didn't have the most fun. But there were some good parts of last year and things we can take from. And, I enjoyed all my teammates and that sort of deal. But I want to definitely give them the best version of myself.
So there's Hunter Renfrow right there talking about the fact that, what went into him not having fun is the fact that, he had high expectations. He wasn't able to, achieve those expectations that he was looking for. Obviously, the injuries played a role, and then he felt like he let his teammates down. So that when I heard that, he felt like he let his teammates down, and he's ready to come back and show and be the guy that they expect him to be and be the teammate that he expects to be. That gets me fired up because I feel like he's got something to prove. And there's nothing more dangerous than a player that has something to prove, right? Ask Josh Jacobs about having something to prove. What did he do? He went out and led the league in rushing. Right now, I'm not saying that Hunter's going to lead the league in receiving yards and scoring all these touchdowns, but man, if he could be the best version of himself and make himself available for Jimmy G like he made himself available for Derek Carr, when you have Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers, who again is a glorified number one, being a number two now, I mean that's exciting, right? And again, these are different style of wide receivers. Devontae is going to get him. He's always going to be option A. Right, but to have option B and C like a Hunter Renfrow and Jacoby Myers is something to really get excited about, And again, it's only 1 week in training camp, but from what I saw and the way that he was out there running routes and catching passes, and I saw some of those vintage Hunter Renfrow catches where he reaches out, the ball might not be right there on him like it's supposed to be, and he finds a way to make a catch, and then get down and get to the ground. Little, 5 yard, 6 yard outs, those kind of yardage and catches and stuff like that. Drive extenders is what I like to call them. That's what he is perfect for. And if he can continue to play that role in this Josh McDaniels-led offense, this team could be dangerous. And Jimmy, the one thing about Jimmy, and I've said it many times, even watching practice, he's practiced 3 out of 4 days, he's not going to do a ton of deep shots. Like I saw a couple 40, 50-yard passes, and they're okay. They're not something that you're going to see all the time. You're not going to see the Mad Bomber back there. Jimmy G is not going to become the Mad Bomber. He's a guy that's going to want to get the ball out of his hands as quickly as possible. That's where guys like Devontae, Jacoby, and Hunter can all eat, because all those guys can get open, boom, instantly. And also after the catch, they can do some things. Jacoby's not the fastest dude, but he just finds a way to get open and sit himself down and make himself available, and then he's good to go. Devontae, I don't have to speak on Devontae. You already know. And then Hunter Renfrow went on what he can do. And coming off a year like he had in 2022, again, 10 games, 36 catches, 330 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 fumbles, that is something that he does not want to repeat. He drove to South Carolina to get his mind right? Just to kind of clear his mind from everything that went on. Obviously, he lost some teammates that he had come up with, like Derek Carr and Darren Waller and Foster Morrow and, guys like that. But it's the business side of things, as he mentioned. Hey, it's the business side of things. I get it. That's how it goes. He's moving forward with Jimmy G. As I mentioned, it doesn't seem like there's one player in that locker room that doesn't like the guy. So that's something. A.J. Cole mentioned the other day, there's no head cases. There's no divas in the locker room. That means something, right? And I'm not saying that there were head cases or divas in the locker room in 2022, but there's not this year. So that goes a long way. It sounds like all the guys get along. It sounds like all the guys like each other and want to go out there and compete with each other. And that goes a very long way. So I think Hunter Renfrow's in for a big year. All he's got to do is keep on working throughout the course of training camp. And when the joint practices happen against the Niners and the Rams, respectfully, that's going to tell you, I believe, a lot about what Hunter Renfrow could do in this offense led by Josh McDaniels and quarterbacked by Jimmy Garoppolo. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts throughout that Locked On Raider podcast. Voicemail line 707-654-4693. This is the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts throughout that Locked On Raider podcast. Voicemail line 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with Barry from Baltimore. He's calling to talk about thoughts on this year's Raiders opposed to last year's Raiders and his expectations. Here he is, Barry from Baltimore.
What up, Q? This is Barry from Baltimore. Just calling in, man. Just want to kind of get your thoughts on something. I don't know if it's me or what. Could be the time of the year. But it doesn't seem like, and this is every year, I guess. So, but it just seems like this year it's just magnified, I guess, that the national media is really, really down on the Raiders. And I get it. They won 6 games last year. Everybody hates McDaniels because he came from the Patriots. People don't like the Patriots. He didn't do obviously great in Denver. People holding that against him, and then what happened with the Colts. So people are looking at that. They're saying that Jimmy G, he stays healthy. The defense, of course, I understand that. Trust me, But it just seems like where last year it was a little different. Everybody said, "Oh, they're making a play." I guess coming off a playoff, stint is why there's a lot of positive vibes, and this year it just seems so. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's just me seeing it. It just feels pretty negative across the board. And, I never really try to pay attention to a lot of that. Unfortunately, these last several years, they've always been right. The Raiders have been bad. I can't argue that. But I don't know. I'm just trying to be optimistic about this year, man. I'm trying to be positive. It's just you keep hearing it. It's like, man, are they right again? I'm like, really? Because I think the offense is going to be good. I just think once they get ironed out, it'll be good. I mean, if the defense can just get it in and get some turnovers, like you mentioned, just start being respectable a little bit, they might be all right. I'm curious to see what Jimmy G does. You got people in there saying, "Oh, he can't throw the long balls, so are they not going to throw any long passes?" Now, I don't know about all that, but I don't know. Just kind of curious your thoughts on everything. But like I said, hey, I'm going to take the positive route. So that's how I'm going to start thinking and keep thinking. Been thinking that way. So, anyways, man, I appreciate what you do on a daily basis. Thanks for bringing that content. I'm excited, man. I'm ready for the season to start, at least some preseason games. We'll watch a little bit of football, so see who makes the team. But I'm out. Go Raiders.
Barry, thanks so much for the call, my man. And, I think it's okay that the Raiders aren't really being talked about in a great way, right? I've talked about it many times that I didn't really know what to expect from the Silver and Black this year. Really didn't. I mean, obviously seeing training camp and being there up close and personal, I'm starting to get a better idea of what this team could potentially look like. But, again, it's only a handful of days. But I think it's okay, right, that they're not talking about them, or they're talking about them that they're not going to be a very good team. That's fine, because I talked about them that they were going to be a damn good team last year, right? They were going to win 10 or 11 games. The offense was going to be unstoppable. It was going to be this, that, and the other, compete with anybody. Like, I remember all those conversations. So that's okay. Fine. This year, nobody knows. This year, everyone thinks that they're going to be terrible. All right, that's fine. Allow them to have that opportunity to go up there and be a really good team, right? I mean, the offense, again, looks like it could be really good. The defense just has to do their part. If the defense could do their part, they can surprise some folks. They've got a tough schedule. We know that. And the Chiefs are in the division. We know that as well. AFC is loaded. We also know that. But what does that matter? Right? None of that matters. You play who's on your schedule, and you go out and you compete week in and week out. And that's all you can do. Start one game at a time. You can't look at the whole season. You got to go one game at a time, 1 week at a time. That's all they could do. Right now, they're building up getting to the start of the season. And, after that, the conversations could start. But I don't feel like there's any reason to, not be optimistic. I'm not saying that they're going to go win the Super Bowl. They're going to be hosting the Super Bowl, next year. But they could end up being a good team. It's just they've got to put everything together. It's about as simple as it is. So, this is the time to build, and I'm okay with that. So, Barry, thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. And let those other cats, let them talk bad about the team and say that they're going to be terrible, and then they'll all of a sudden have to walk back their words. Or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll just act like they never said it, which is probably the real case that'll happen. But it is what it is. It's all good. Barry, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Up next, got a text from Raven in SoCal. I said, greetings, Q. It's the Raven in SoCal. Although it's just talk rather than actual play on the field, I want to share my thoughts on the pressers of free safety Trayvon Merrick and linebacker Robert Spillane. The response Merrick gave that he basically didn't know what he was doing out in the field last season and implied he's still learning now is a bit troubling to me. I understand the idea of learning curve and learning a new scheme, but after a full season, I expect him to be dialed in by now. I hope I'm dead wrong. However, he somewhat gave me the impression of someone who loves the idea of being an NFL player but does not love football. On the opposite end of Merrick was Spillane, who spoke like a guy who loves football, and just about everything he spoke on ended with how important it was as a defender to get after the ball and create turnovers. I also like how when you asked him a question about linebacker coach Antonio Pierce, his eyes lit up. He spoke about how valuable it was from the linebacker room to have a coach who has been there and done that at a high level in playoff and championship games. I know that the knock on Spillane is that he's a liability in coverage. However, I believe that his overall strengths and mindset will make this defense better. Win, lose, or tie, Raiders till I die, baby, the Raven. Thanks so much for that text. And, yeah, Merrick and Spillane talked to us on Saturday following practice. And Merrick was very ho-hum. I don't think I asked any questions to him. He just, he's not one that's really going to be that talkative. I think he's a good dude. I think he does love football, but I don't think he really talks about it the way that, is great for radio or great for the podcast, because he's not really going to go in depth. But I'm with you with him not knowing where he's supposed to be at and still learning. He's got to pick it up quick, fast, and in a hurry. This training camp is important for him. Preseason is important for him. He's got to prove he could be that guy. I saw Chris Smith, the rookie from Georgia, out there directing traffic. Like, I saw that. I saw him yelling at someone saying that they were lined up incorrectly and trying to get them lined up. That's a rookie, right? That's a rookie. He was out there doing that. Trayvon Merrick has been out there, but it's something I continue to say to all the guys that that I'm standing on the sideline with. I see 25 out there, but I don't see 25 out there, if you know what I mean. Like, I don't see him flying around to the ball. I see him, the back of his jersey on a deep ball. I see him going over to give some help, but he's not really in the position to give the help. He's there in the position if the guy catches the ball and he can help with the tackle, but not really make a play on the ball, if you know what I mean. So I have seen 25 out there, but I haven't seen 25 out there. And Spillane, man, I'll tell you what, Spillane had me juiced after his media session, right? And I wanted to ask that question, like, dog, what does football mean to you? Because you're right. And I said this when we've met with him one time. I don't know how good he's going to be in this defense because he is a liability in coverage. I mean, you can't fake that. But this dude, you could just tell he loves football. Like, I feel like that's all he talks about is football, right? And he said he's going to get out in the community. He's going to get to know everybody. He wants people to know who Robert Spillane is. But from what I know about this dude, like, all he is football. Like, football, football, football. And you're right. He kept making, so many points of emphasis to going and getting the ball. You've got to turn the ball over. You got to get to the ball. You got to get to the quarterback. Like, he was on that. He was hammering that home to the point where after he walked away, Vinny Bonsignore looked at me because he knows I've been talking about turnovers quite a bit. And he said, "Sounds like a guy you'd like, Q." And I was like, there's no doubt. There is no doubt. Like, I like the as a matter of fact from Robert Spillane. I like the intensity from Spillane. Again, I don't know how they're going to use him, how Patrick Graham plans on using him. But I'm very interested to see it because, again, he is a dude that the Raiders went and signed pretty early. They said that they were going to let him have an opportunity to wear the green dot. Divine Diablo's obviously going to have that as well. They like his leadership from Pittsburgh. I mean, there's a lot of things that they like. I just want to see how they put him out there because coverage is not one of his strong suits. He's a thumper, and he's a guy that's going to run around and try to get to the ball and make a play on the ball at some point, right? But it's not going to be some guy just in great coverage, and that's just not what it's going to be. But I did like that media session from Robert Spillane. I could literally play the whole thing on the show right now, and I think it'd be good stuff just because you come away kind of juiced up after listening to Robert Spillane talk for a little while, just talk about football. So thanks so much for that text. I appreciate you. Got time for one more call and got time for one more text. This call we'll take from Wine Country Raider. He's calling to talk about this Raiders team headed into the season and kind of compare and contrast last season to this upcoming season. Here he is, Wine Country Raider.
What's up, Q? It's your boy, Wine Country Raider. And I'm just calling real quick to talk about my thoughts on going into the season. Now, the past few years, I'm always kind of more optimistic than pessimistic. But I was always nervous watching games. I just felt like, especially this last year, with Carr in the new system, I was just, every game I was kind of nervous. I just didn't have like an excited feeling. I didn't know if he was going to make the right decisions in the new system. But going into this season, with all the guys that we have returning, the O-line being, a lot of the guys are coming back. The defense, these guys coming back in the second, year two in this system. The offensive guys come back year two in this system. Devontae's year two in this system. And having Jimmy, I am not worried about his play whatsoever. And I know that he's not perfect, but he is a winner. And I guess my only nervous is obvious is injury history, but I just have a very positive outlook on this season. We don't have high expectations, and I just feel that Jimmy is going to come out and just show you what he's made of. The whole team is just going to come out with a better sense of the scheme and the vibe, and I'm excited again. I'm very excited for the start of the season, and I think everybody needs to, be ready to see what Josh McDaniels as a head coach can be now with year 2 with this team. And I got a lot of faith in McDaniels. I think his style and everyone buying in is gonna say a lot. So I'm just Raider Nation, let's be optimistic and let's just see what we got. Wine Country Raider out. Just win, baby.
Thank you so much for that call. And, similar to what I said earlier to Barry from Baltimore, there's nothing wrong with having optimistic feelings right now. This is the time of year you're supposed to have it. Everybody's 0-0. Everybody's trying to build their team. Everybody's got an opportunity, right? I mean, this is the perfect time to do it. Until they prove to you or show you that they're not that team, it's fine. They've got a lot of talent. We know that. There's tons of talented dudes on that team right now. They have a strong 91 guys out there, and only 53 are going to make the final roster. So they've got to come together and figure out what they're going to do with the wide receivers, with the cornerbacks, all that. So it's a lot of competition right now in training camp. So to be optimistic right now, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, we'll see what it looks like when the final 53, when they come to that, and then when they get on that plane, they head to Denver. And that's all that's really going to matter. So Wine Country Raider, thanks so much for that call. I do appreciate you. One more text, and we'll close up shop. This one's from Mike in Vegas. He says, hey, Q, it's Mike from Vegas. Hope all is well. I was just looking at some Sincere McCormick highlights, and I could definitely see why they stashed him. Good vision, explosion, and tough to bring down. Not trying to get too hyped, but from what I see, kind of reminds me of Maurice Jones-Drew. Obviously has a long way to go to get there, but a ceiling like that would be great. Hopefully he gets some burn in the preseason and can make this roster. Have a good one, Q. That's Mike in Vegas talking about the running back Sincere McCormick, a guy that I definitely would pay attention to, a guy that they stashed in May last year. Remember this. They stashed him on the IR in May last year for a reason. Obviously they want to see what he's got. I know for a fact they love what they've seen from Zamir White in practice. I know that. It's only been 4 days with no pads. I know that they love what they see from Zamir White. There's guys like Britton Brown that are out there competing. There's guys like Sincere McCormick that are out there competing. Remember Sincere McCormick. Do not sleep on him. I think, like Mike said, he's going to get plenty of burn in preseason, and you can show, and he'll be able to show who he's going to be. Does that mean I think he's going to replace Josh Jacobs or that Zamir White's going to replace Josh Jacobs? No, not at all. I think that they'll find a way to work something out with Josh Jacobs, but I do think that they have nice horses in the stable. Let's put it like that when it comes to the running back position, especially with Zamir White, Sincere McCormick, Britton Brown, right? I mean, Brandon Bolden has a little something to him. Amir Abdullah has a different role. They've got, again, competition really at every position. That's something that they made sure that they did. There's speed all over the field, something that they lacked a lot of in 2022. So that's all I got time for on today's show. Raider Nation, again, will be at practice starting at 9:15 this morning. It gets wrapped up around 11. We'll talk to offensive coordinator Mick Lombardi, and we'll also talk to some players following practice. Of course, anything good, I'll definitely bring it to the show tomorrow. So until then, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.